Today we're going to make a blingy sun catcher. Hey, I'm Amrita from Artray Jewelry. Thanks for joining me today. Tools you will need: a steel bench block, a ball peen hammer. You could use a regular ball peen hammer or jeweler's hammer, but you need something that has that round edge. A ruler. We might need a file, so I'm going to keep that handy. Bent nose pliers or chain nose pliers. Needle nose pliers, this will help with the wire wrapping. A pair of 6-step looping pliers. And a flush cutter. For materials, I am using 3 kinds of wires: 18 or 20 gauge copper wire, 12 or 14 gauge copper wire, and this is forming the basis of our sun catcher, and 24 gauge copper wire for wrapping the crystals and beads. And for the most fun part, beads of your choice. And today I am feeling in a metallic orange, copper, bronzy, goldy phase. And so that's the mood I'm in today. So we're going to make something with this. And I just went around, looked at all of my beads and collected a bunch of different styles. This is a beautiful faceted crystal for sun catchers. I'll have that linked below. And then these are just some random beads. I'll find these on Amazon too and link them below for you. Sun catchers are a great project to use up all of your craft beads and crystals. So make sure you make a box like I do with various beads that you can keep for your sun catchers. Typically the ones that might be a little too large for jewelry, I set aside for this. I'm going to set all of my beads off to the side here. We're going to start with the wire. Now I'm upcycling this wire so you can see it's already kind of bent out of shape a little bit. So to start, what I'm going to do is bring my bench block here so that you can see what I'm doing. And I'm gently going to tap this wire just to straighten it a little bit. Now, if your wire is straight and you're working off of wire from a spool, you will skip this step. So I'm going to speed through this a little bit. So that kind of got it as straight as I need it to be, just to smoothen out the bends in it. Now I've cut myself 16 inches of this wire. You could work with 12 inches and make a smaller sun catcher as well. We're going to be using some coiling and swirling, and that's why I wanted to work with a larger piece. So first we're going to shape this wire. I'm going to bend the wire to find approximately the midpoint, and it doesn't have to be exactly the midpoint. We're just going to do just off center a little bit here, so you'll see one end will be slightly shorter than the other, and we're going to form a loop. And you could use your 6-step looping pliers just to give you the shape, or you could just do it by hand. So I'm just shaping it into a larger loop. It's not the same size as this, so I was just using this as a guide. And I want it to be more like a teardrop shape. And now I have 2 ends. One is a little longer than the other. I'm going to first flush cut this end. Because I'm using these thicker gauge wires, I'm using an older flush cutter of mine. But if you don't have an older flush cutter, use your flush cutter but go all the way down to the back so that you don't break off the tip. I've had that happen to me a few times, so I've kept aside a couple of these flush cutters that are worn out, but I can use them for these thicker gauge wires. Since I'm at this, I'm going to flush cut this end also. Now you could take the time to file these edges out, but that's a totally optional step. I am coiling it such that you won't be, scratching anything against it, so we don't have to do that. There, I don't know if you heard it, but I dropped a bead, so that rolled off on the floor. Hopefully Leo won't go after it, but he's been pretty good. He has never climbed onto things or never thrown stuff off of my craft table, so I'm very thankful for that. I don't have one of those rowdy cats. The only thing he's ever done is he's figured out that the cell phone of mine, I put a alarm for his evening feeding because otherwise he would bug me earlier and earlier in the day. And so he's figured out that alarm rings on my phone, and he sometimes will go and tap my phone or try to throw my phone off the side table, but that's the extent of it. Okay, so what I'm starting to do here is using the second last step of my looping pliers, I'm starting to make a curl towards that loop. And we are coiling this to make a swirl. And it doesn't have to be precise, but if you do what I'm doing and gently just move your pliers along the way, they will kind of form a nice distance coil here. You could have this join all the way in here, but I'm not doing that. I think this works just fine. Now I'm going to flip this, and I'm going to do the same on this side, but what I'm first going to do is pull this wire over like that to form that lovely shape. And again, you can choose how far you want this to be or if you want it to touch. And I'm going to coil this one toward this, but from the outside. So again, I'm coiling outward. I find that easier than coiling toward me. Hence, I flipped the piece. And there we go. And then play around with the shape, see how you want it. Depends on what speaks to you here. I'm going to close that out because I'm going to want the beads that I string on here to stay within that circle. And there, we have the basic shape for our Suncatcher done. Now we're going to hammer this to texture it and work harden it, so it's going to stay in shape longer. So I'm just going to start from one end and hammer across the other. Again, I'll either reduce the volume or speed through this. Don't mind my fingers, this is blood clots because I hurt myself when I'm doing this. I have really sensitive nail beds, so it's not dirty nails, it's just a sensitive nail beds. It typically doesn't bother me, but every time I'm recording a video for you guys, I'm always very conscious about it. And a couple of times I've considered just painting my nails, but that the nail paint just chips off and it's not something I usually wear. So I guess it's a necessary evil with sensitive nail beds and my love for this craft. Hopefully you guys don't mind and hopefully you understand. Now where the wire crisscrosses, I don't want to tap on that because then you can damage the wire or even break it, but I'm going to do it on either side. And I'm going to hold that down and hammer this. And then because you're hammering on one side, the wire tends to shift. You could leave it like this and kind of have that organic play, or you can flip it and then hammer it gently. I do like this organic shape because when it moves around with the breeze, I think I will give it some nice dimension. And then depending on how we wrap the crystals around it, it might give that additional layer of crystals visible as well. So for now, I'm going to leave it like this. I'm just going to straighten that a little bit and leave this as is. Now for the fun part of attaching the crystals to this, I'm going to have this at the very bottom, so dangle this. I'm going to turn my Suncatcher off to the side so that because it is a horizontal video and so you'll be able to see more. But I'm going to have this at the bottom dangling. I want a few crystals here and I want a few crystals here, and then we'll make a loop on the top. But also You could just stop that right there. This could just be a plain copper piece. But if you'd like, you could use tiny seed beads or tiny crystals and then kind of accent the wire around the spiral as well. So I'm first going to start with doing these edges, and then we'll figure out if we want to add more beads here. So I'm using some 20 gauge wire pieces that I have cut here, and I'm just going to slide on a crystal, and we're going to do wrapped loops because that, when I'm working with thinner gauge wire like a 20 gauge wire, it gives it it will hold it in place and won't unravel. But if you're working with a thicker gauge wire and your beads have bigger holes, you can use just do a simple lollipop loop and that will work just fine. I have videos that show both of those loops, and I've done those other sun catchers before using both techniques. I will link those up in the cards and down in the description below. So there I have one wrap loop on one side, and now I'm going to wrap on the other side. So just make a 90-degree angle with a little space for the wraps, wrap around that, and then tie the wraps, about 3 wraps. So that's one crystal done. So let's see what we want to do next. This is a fun frosty piece, and maybe do this one. We'll have that go down that way, and then on this side going to add a little bit of orange in there. And that's a beautiful bead, so we'll add that, and then this orange. I'm wondering maybe putting something like that in the center. Let's see. So before I close this loop out, I'm going to attach the crystal that we just wrapped. Make sure to do that, otherwise you'll have to use jump rings to connect them. And then close that wrap, because once these wraps are closed, you really can't attach anything on. Slide that on, and then do the other one. Now, because I want to attach it to this one, I am going to use the second step, so it's slightly larger, and then I can slip this on. And wrap that. Here I'm going to slide this in. Oops. Looks like there's a little bit of a loop on this side, so just snip that off. And I'm going to slide this on. And then wrap this closed. And then you can just tuck the extra wires in or snip them off. But just make sure that they don't stick out. And then we'll attach these two. Actually, maybe I'm going to skip this down here and move that up. We'll just attach this crystal. Now to do this one, this is side drilled. It's not through the bead. So be very careful with a crystal like this, because if you tighten the wire too tight, you can snap this top off. So I'm just going to gently hold that crystal and fold the wire over. So I'm going to just fold that over and then hold that in place and straighten this main longer wire, because we're going to wrap around it. And we're going to make 3 wraps. And snip that off. And then make a loop on the top with this other wire. So it's going to form an 8. Slip on this loop. And then wrap that shut. So I'm wrapping it over the existing wrap, so it forms kind of a knot look on the top of that. And then we're going to snip that off and tuck it in. Oh, that's so pretty. I love those colors. Okay. Now, because this is a little long one, I think I'm just going to add a couple of beads up here. I thought this would be kind of fun to use, so I might use that one, this one, and one more. Let's see. Maybe this one. I think that would be pretty neat. This isn't really, this is just a clear acrylic one. So maybe I can skip that and just use another blingy piece. Maybe we do this. There. Yeah, let's do that. So because I'm going to attach it to this, again, I'm going to make it slightly larger and use the second step of the looping pliers. And then slip the wire on. And make 3 wraps. And slide the bead on and use the first step to wrap 3 times again. Now to finish this off, if you're not doing any beading, you can cut off this. We'll do that, we'll cut off the extra wire, but I'm going to create a 8 loop so that we can dangle this off a hook. And so to do that, I'm using the first step of my looping pliers with the 14 gauge copper wire, and then the last step of the looping pliers in the opposite direction to make an 8. And then we're going to snip that wire off with the flush side toward the hook. And so I didn't put the flush side toward the hook, so I'm going to flip it over, flush side toward the hook, and then snip that. Now all we have to do is open this, slide the Suncatcher on, and you can be done. So let's just go back through and make sure we have tucked in or cut off all the extra wires. I think that one's really long, so I'm going to snip that off. And tuck it in. And check the bottom too. Yeah. So that's a beautiful hammered swirly Suncatcher. This is similar to the Unalome symbol, but I love the shape and I love how organic that looks. Now you could add some crystals on this, so I'm thinking I might do that. So let me go look in my bead stash and see if there are seed beads or crystals we can add to this. Here I have a couple of trays of these boxes of my crystals and seed beads. So let's see, I'm going to pull these triangular trays out and get a few of these crystals. So I think this would be a beautiful color to go with that champagne coppery color. So I'm going to get some of these. And then we're also going to get some of these coppery faceted crystals as well. And I like to put them in separate trays because then if I don't use them all, it's easier to just put them back into the boxes. And from this one, I'm going to grab some of this gold tone seed beads. There's a piece of wire in there. So these are the colors I have. I'm going to use 24 gauge copper wire to wrap those. And I also found this tube of these frosted seed beads. So we're going to get some of those as well. So most of this project is made with upcycled materials. So this 14 gauge copper wire, the 20 gauge copper wire, and now the 24 gauge copper wires, everything I've salvaged from the electrical wires. And then these are beads we're upcycling from old necklaces. And then this one is a brand new crystal that I bought. And then so are these beads. These are all new. So I think what I'm going to do here is put crystals all the way from this end to this end first, and then we'll see what else we want to add. And I haven't planned this out, we're doing this together, so we'll see how what all we want to add to it. I usually like to wrap 5 times when I get wires attached. I feel like that gives me a secure hold and a connect between the wires, so I'm going to do 5 wraps. Whoops. I blame that on this little naughty crystal over here, so I'm going to move those aside so I don't do that again, because a few of the beads roll down as per usual. So that's a 5th wrap. And then on the 6th one, and here's where I like to make the wraps really close together and move them tightly bound together. That gives it a neater, more finished look. And so I like to do that as I go, and I'm going to slide that up to that join. And then I'm going to slide on one of the frosted beads. And then do 3 wraps. And then one of the gold clear beads. And again 3 wraps. And one of the copper crystals. This thing is really swinging around the place. Okay, so that's the pattern I'm going to follow. And then I'm going to switch the crystals out with the clear and the champagne, the copper and the champagne crystals. And now the champagne. The wire is a little tarnished here, so I'm just going to take my Dremel and just buff that out a little bit. It's coming along beautifully. And you could use any colors you want on this. Like I said, today my mood was kind of in these golden ranges, but this would make a beautiful rainbow suncatcher too if you want to do that, or shades of blue and green and purple would be great. I tend to usually gravitate to blue, greens and purple, so today when the mood struck to do this color, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. You're getting close to the end of this line here. And I'm going to move the beads around to space it out a little bit because I'm going to run out of this wire. I would have liked to add another bead, but likely won't be able to. Now we can just slide the beads, spread them out a little bit, and you won't even know. There. There we have that. Now you could add as many beads as you like, but I think I'm going to stop here. I think this looks very elegant. And we have a beautiful finished suncatcher. Now if I can get this cat to catch the light outdoors and take a nice video of it, I will make sure to add that to this video so you can see it in its full glory. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Have a beautiful day.